Welcome, everyone. I am Tamara Blake Wallace. Planning
Recording
Commission.
in progress.
Welcome, everyone. I am Tamara Blake Wallace, Planning Commission Administrator, and welcome to the November 20th, 2024 public hearing. We will start off tonight with call to order.
Good evening.
Termination of form.
My name is John Toohey. Commissioner Freeland,
Here.
Commissioner Gadway,
Here.
Commissioner Holler,
Here.
Commissioner Kernan,
Here.
Commissioner McQueen,
Here.
and Commissioner Weems.
Here.
We have a quorum, so we are called to order. Would you all please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Rachel, if you want to come up, start the public hearing.
Good evening, Planning Commission.
Evening.
Good evening.
Rachel O'Shea, zoning planner. With me is Will Hager, planner 3. I'll go over a couple of items for tonight's public hearing, and then I'll read the memo, and then we'll do the presentation. The purpose of tonight's public hearing is to provide the public an opportunity to comment on the proposed Calvert County zoning ordinance update and associated proposed amendments to the county's comprehensive plan, town center master plans, and town center zoning ordinances. This hearing is held per the Commissioner's adopted guidelines for conduct at public hearings and meetings per Resolution 6-89. This hearing has been properly advertised as required by Maryland land use law. The board adopted a resolution in 1989 intending to maintain the order and decorum of the governmental process. The Ethics Commission has asked that we remind speakers at public comment that lobbyists include those who seek to influence public policy, and lobbyists must register in advance. Since this public hearing is being held virtually and in person, the public can attend by viewing the live stream on the county's website. However, if you wish to speak, you must either sign in on the sheet in the back of the room, use the raise the hand function if attending via Zoom, or call in at 301-715-8592 and enter the meeting code 858-5579-4115. If asked, the passcode is pound. And then listen to the board's meeting until called upon to speak. When the floor is open for public comment for this hearing, those in attendance will be called upon first in the order they signed up. Those calling in will need to press *9. Speakers will be identified by the last 4 digits of their phone number and unmuted when called upon. Speakers will be asked to state their name and address. Speakers who are providing comments as individuals will be allocated 2 minutes. Comments being made as designated representative of a group will be allocated 5 minutes. Memo. Background. The zoning ordinance update and proposed text amendments. As mandated in the comprehensive plan, the Calvert County zoning ordinance is adopted to regulate land uses as part of the effort to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of Calvert County residents. Ordinance 35-06, approved by the Board of County Commissioners, adopted the current CCZO in May of 2006. The county's comprehensive plan was recently adopted in 2019 and amended in 2022. The project started in 2016, and during that time, county staff and the comprehensive plan consultant conducted a zoning analysis of existing conditions. Through the confirmation of the county's vision with comprehensive plan adoption, Calvert 2040, staff began working on developing zoning recommendations and a draft zoning ordinance that would bring the zoning ordinance into compliance with the new comprehensive plan. Staff developed a schedule to review the draft in increments with the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. Staff presented articles of the draft zoning ordinance to the BOCC and PC at joint work sessions from 2023 to May of 2024. Staff returned to the BOCC with a few unresolved topics to discuss for direction in July and August of 2024. so that staff could prepare the final draft for public review and input prior to scheduling public hearings. Background on the proposed comprehensive plan and Huntingtown Solomons and St. Leonard Town Center amendments. On September 10th, 2024, the BOCC directed staff to process proposed amendments to the Calvert County Comprehensive Plan and the Huntingtown Solomons and St. Leonard Town Center Master Plan. The proposed amendments would eliminate the architectural review committees and allow staff to perform administrative review in accordance with Town Center Master Plans and zoning ordinances. Allow a maximum of no more than 4 units per acre in town centers, and change the designated planning category of 8 parcels to heavy industrial I2. The parcels are currently zoned industrial 1 district I1, rural community district RCD, and farm and forest district FFD, and are located in the southern portion of the county. At a planning commission work session in September 2024, staff informed the planning commission of the Board of County Commissioners' directive to staff. The Planning Commission directed staff to send the amendments to the agencies for review, schedule public hearing, and notify departments, agencies, and adjoining jurisdictions at least 60 days in advance of the public hearing. Discussion on the zoning ordinance update. Staff completed the August 2024 draft and made draft available to the public on August 30th. The public had the opportunity to review the changes and provide comment until September 27th. Staff returned to the BC and the BOCC in October of 2024 to review the August 2024 draft, as well as comments received in preparation for the public hearings. Staff made updates to the draft in response to PC and BOCC direction, as well as the county attorney's review. The updated November 24 draft was made available to the public at the time the public notice was printed in the newspaper on November 1st, 2024. Also included for consideration at the public hearing are proposals for the town center zoning ordinance. Discussion on the proposed comprehensive plan amendments. On September 19th, 2024, staff initiated the 60-day comment period and distributed the proposed amendments to the appropriate department, agencies, and adjoining jurisdictions for comment in accordance with the Maryland Annotated Code Land Use Article 3-203. The proposed amendments were also posted to the Calvert County Comprehensive Plan and Huntingtown Solomons and St. Leonard Town Center web pages. The public comment period was announced via press release, social media, through the county's subscription-based notification email system, Notify Me, and public notice on November 1st, 2024. The public comment period ends November 18th, 2024. As of November 8th, 2024, 3 agencies and 6 individuals submitted feedback on those proposed amendments. No fiscal impact, and the conclusion recommendation is to staff requesting the Planning Commission to hold a public hearing and take appropriate actions. So at this time, we'll go through our presentation. Will? Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Rachel, and good evening, commissioners. And so, to start off, as we've done for all of these presentations, we're going to start by going over the background on how we got to where we are now in this process. And some of this might be a little bit repetitive from what we just heard in the memo, but it was a long memo, so maybe it won't hurt to have a little reminder. So, staff prepared a draft zoning ordinance to bring the ordinance into compliance with the comprehensive plan. And that first draft was made available to the public in May of 2023. Staff gave a series of presentations at joint work sessions with the commissioners, as well as hosting public forums over the course of a year, reviewing each draft article of the draft. Staff revised the draft based on feedback received from commissioners and the public, and a revised draft zoning ordinance was made available to the public August 30th, 2024. Presentations on the August 2024 draft were made to the Planning Commission and the BOCC, and public comments were received. And the November 2024 draft zoning ordinance was revised based on comments and direction received and following county attorney office review. And before we proceed any further, I thought we'd first review the reasons why we're updating the ordinance. So this project really began after the adoption of the updated comprehensive plan for the county in 2019, and one of the primary goals was to make the zoning ordinance consistent with that plan. And the last comprehensive review of the zoning ordinance was back in 2006. So this also provided an opportunity for comprehensive review of zoning regulations. And in recent years, a lot of text amendments have been necessary, and when we're having to do multiple text amendments frequently, it's a sign that a comprehensive review and update of the zoning ordinance might be needed. And it can be preferable to update an ordinance comprehensively rather than to do it piecemeal through text amendments. With the current ordinance, there have been also issues with vague or unclear regulations and how they should be interpreted. And as part of this, the goal to provide a more efficient and user-friendly ordinance, we aim to reduce redundant and repetitious text. And the articles have been reorganized to make finding provisions in the ordinance more intuitive. And so I mentioned that one of the goals of the update was to bring the zoning ordinance in alignment with the comprehensive plan. An example of that is what we're looking at here on this slide. The future land use map on the left was adopted as part of the comprehensive plan, and as you can see with the draft zoning map on the right, it's essentially a mirror image of the future land use map with a few minor exceptions. For instance, like the expansion of Prince Frederick Town Center, which will be addressed at the time the Prince Frederick Town Center zoning ordinance is updated. And one thing I'd like to discuss for a moment is the new rural neighborhood district and the reconfigured residential district as it pertains to density, because I think there still might be some confusion out there. Under current regulations, how much density is permitted on a parcel in the rural community district is determined by whether that parcel is inside or outside of the 1 mile radius from town centers. So on this slide to the left, you can see the 1 mile radius around Huntingtown. It's the circle in red around the town center, and the rural community district areas are in yellow. So under current regulations, the rural community district areas outside of the 1 mile radius are permitted a density of 1 dwelling unit per 4 acres with the purchase of TDRs, and within the 1 mile radius, they are permitted a density of 1 dwelling unit per acre with the purchase of TDRs. In the draft, the 1 mile radius policy has been removed, and in its place is the new rural neighborhood district surrounding the town centers of Dunkirk, Owings, Huntingtown, and St. Leonard, and a reconfigured residential district surrounding the town centers of Prince Frederick, Lusby, Solomons, and Chesapeake Beach. On the slide to the right, the new rural neighborhood district is the area colored orange. And in both the rural neighborhood district and the residential district, the permitted density with the purchase of TDRs is 1 dwelling unit per acre in the draft. So broadly speaking, this isn't a dramatic change. What's being changed is we're removing a flawed policy, the 1 mile radius policy, that, as you can see, dissects parcels rather arbitrarily, and replacing it with zoning districts that follow parcel boundaries. So we're not proposing to increase maximum density in these areas or to reduce minimum lot sizes for properties on septic. We're replacing something illogical, the 1 mile radius policy, with something more logical, zoning districts that follow parcel boundaries. So what we're looking at here are the permitted residential densities in the draft zoning ordinance. And some of these densities have been adjusted as we've proceeded in this process. The permitted residential density in the residential district was reduced, and in all town centers, any district with a permitted residential density over 4 dwelling units per acre currently has been reduced to a maximum of 4 dwelling units per acre in the draft, which will substantially impact density potential in Prince Frederick, Lusby, and Solomons. But one thing that remains is a clear hierarchy where the highest permitted densities are found in the town centers, the next highest in the areas immediately surrounding town centers, and then lower densities once you get out into the rural community and farm and forest districts. So on this slide compares permitted residential density in the draft with the purchase of TDRs to the density permitted under current regulations. And as you can see on the table, broadly speaking, in terms of permitted density with the purchase of TDRs, every zoning district in the draft either reduces permitted residential density as compared with current regulations or its equivalent. And a few changes to the subdivision regulations to note relevant to density. The ability to create exception lots is null and void 2 years after the adoption of the updated zoning ordinance. Exception lots are a grandfathering provision for parcels of record as of October 21st, 1974, that essentially allows for 1 or 2 additional bonus lots. There's a very complicated equation for determining the number of exception lots on a parcel, but after doing all the math, it boils down to either a max of 1 or 2 lots per parcel. And apologies, the bullet on this slide should say 1 or 2, not 1. And the number of family conveyance lots allowed is to be reduced to 1 lot total, which will require the purchase of TDRs. So if a property owner has already created 1 or more family conveyance lots, their ability to create family conveyance lots has been exhausted. One important thing to note here, this change to family conveyance regulations does not apply or change any policies in regard to agricultural preservation districts. So these changes would only apply to properties that are not preserved as APDs. And the reason we're including these changes is that these family conveyance provisions have not been used as they were originally intended. There have been numerous instances of these family conveyance lots being sold outside of the family. There are provisions that penalize property owners who violate restrictions on selling family conveyance lots outside the family, but they don't appear to be an adequate disincentive. And so our solution was to limit family conveyance lots to no more than 1. So when you look at the whole picture on density, including reducing the ability to create these bonus lots, what we're looking at is a rather significant reduction in density compared to what can be done under current regulations. And before we move on from density, I wanted to address something that was brought up at the last Planning Commission meeting in regard to the definition of net acreage, which is the acreage used in determining the density potential of a parcel. Under both current regulations and in the draft, net acreage is determined after wetlands have been removed from the total acreage of the parcel. And is a point of discussion whether steep slopes should also be subtracted from the total acreage of a parcel before determining that parcel's density potential. Keep in mind that the draft protects steep slopes, including much stronger protective buffers from steep slopes in new subdivisions. So changing the definition of net acreage to add the subtraction of steep slopes would serve the purpose of reducing the parcel's density potential, essentially. And if the goal is to reduce density potential, we are already doing that in direct ways with this draft, which is can be preferable to changing the definition of net acreage, which is more of an indirect backdoor way that makes the process of determining a parcel's density more complicated and time-consuming. And one of our goals with this update was to simplify these processes, and that's an example of the type of thing we're trying to move away from. Next topic we're going to discuss is the new I-2 heavy industrial district, which are located in the south of the county entirely, which is what we're looking at on this slide. The heavy industrial districts are shaded dark blue on this map. There are 3 areas where these districts are concentrated. One is the parcel where the LNG plant is located. Another to the north are the properties owned by the Calvert Close Nuclear Power Plant. And lastly, the area around the Peel Landfill and Solomon's Wastewater Treatment Plant. And as you can see on the draft zoning map, these are areas that are relatively isolated from existing development, either separated from development by highways or surrounded by farm and forest districts. So the I-2 heavy industrial district is intended to provide for a variety of energy production and associated uses, as well as light manufacturing, fabricating, processing, distributing, and warehousing uses. And the maximum height permitted in I-2 has been increased to 75 feet with the condition that the building be set back a distance double the height of the building from all property lines except for adjacent properties under common ownership. In the current zoning ordinance, the maximum height permitted in industrial districts is 50 feet. And so in regard to what the vision is for these areas zoned heavy industrial, the intent is to provide flexibility for appropriate industrial businesses that generate little traffic, create high-paying jobs, and substantially contribute to the county tax base with minimal, if any, impact to residential and commercial uses. So we're not talking about uses that you might traditionally associate with a heavy industrial area like heavy manufacturing, asphalt plants, fossil fuel refineries, etc. But we are talking about data centers, which we will address in the following slides. First, for anyone unfamiliar, the definition of a data center in our draft is as follows. An establishment, facility, building, or series of buildings which are part of a unified development and arranged in the campus setting engaging in the storage, management, processing, or transmission of digital data and housing computer or network equipment, systems, servers, appliances, and other associated components related to digital data operations. And on the characteristics of data centers themselves and the data center industry, I am not a subject matter expert, so I will not be going into that, but what I can recommend for those who are listening who might be interested is to watch the presentation given at the BOCC's regular meeting on October 22nd by the president of the Data Center Coalition. I think you'll find it very informative. So, in regards to the November 2024 draft, data center is a conditional use in the I-2 district and is no longer requires special exception approval. And the conditions for data centers have been revised as well in the November draft. The conditions now read as follows. The data center shall be set back 200 feet from all property lines and 400 feet from any lot or parcel with a residential building or active residential building permit, except for adjacent properties under common ownership. Primary building facades shall include at least 2 of the following treatments: fenestration, recesses in the building facade to avoid continuous unbroken plane, or changes in building material, pattern, texture, color, or accent materials. Any noise generated by the data center, including any accessory mechanical equipment, must comply with Chapter 80 of the Noise Control Ordinance of the Calvert County Code. And prior to any applicable Planning Commission meeting, the applicant shall conduct at least one public meeting in the election district in which the use is proposed. That meeting shall be held at the community center for that district or such other suitable facility within that district. The other new industrial district that this update to the zoning ordinance includes is the IMU Industrial Mixed Use District. This is a district intended to provide for a mix of light industrial uses with compatible commercial uses such as recreation, entertainment, and retail establishments, in part to promote the reuse of older industrial structures that may no longer be suitable for their original purposes. And the following uses are no longer, however, there were some revisions made to the uses permitted in this district in the November draft. The following uses are no longer permitted: retail, general, eating establishments, medical office or clinic, and drive-through facility. And before I move on, one of the reasons for introducing this district was certain existing light industrial areas like the industrial park off of MD 231 west of Prince Frederick have been trending in this mixed-use direction for a number of years, and tax amendments have been passed to adopt to that trend. And so this new zoning district is a continuation of that. On uses generally, we don't have time to go over all of the changes regarding uses in this draft. The bullets on this slide just are a few highlights. So detached accessory dwellings, the maximum square feet of gross floor area permitted has been increased from 900 square feet to 1,500 square feet. Agricultural, seafood, livestock processing now permitted in the Farm and Forest District, Rural Community District, and Rural Neighborhood District, and Residential District on farm properties, provided the farm has received all required state licenses and approvals. Public events, public assemblies on farmland is now a permitted special exception use with conditions in the RCD, R&D, and RD. And the number of events permitted per year has been increased from 2 to 12. And chickens and poultry on non-farm properties 1 acre or more in size will no longer require special exception approval going forward. And these are also examples of the county listening to citizens and property owners on the types of projects they're interested in pursuing that the county believed were reasonable, and revising the zoning ordinance to accommodate that interest. And there are changes regarding to natural resource protection areas in the draft. First, for anyone unfamiliar, we have state mandated critical area regulations that are pretty strict, and those apply to properties within 1,000 feet of tidal waters. So what we're talking about when we refer to natural resource protection, we're talking about regulations that apply to properties outside of the critical area. And so what's included in this update relevant to these areas are stronger protective buffers from sensitive environmental features like streams, wetlands, and steep slopes for new subdivisions created after the adoption of the updated zoning ordinance. But for lots and parcels created prior to the adoption of the updated zoning ordinance, we're not proposing any major changes. Another important thing to note, for new subdivisions, we're requiring that new lots 1 acre or less in size not include any of these sensitive environmental features or their buffers. And for new lots over 1 acre in size, the developer must show that they're providing enough buildable area on the lot for not just a dwelling, but also amenities like porches, decks, swimming pools, etc. And what's considered a minimum sufficient suitable land area has been increased, a 20,000 square foot minimum in the draft for lots having individual septic systems, which must also exclude septic recovery areas as well as any setbacks, compared to 5,000 square foot minimum sufficient suitable land requirement under the current regulations. So in short, stronger protective buffers from sensitive environmental features for new subdivisions where lots can be designed around these new requirements while also trying to protect property rights for lots and parcels already in existence. And on site development and design standards, we've included stronger requirements for on-site pedestrian circulation, stronger requirements for on-site residential recreation that include more flexibility in the types of recreation facilities provided after a minimum amount of recreational green space has been provided. And we received direction at the October meeting with the BOCC to add provisions for community benefit agreements in the November draft. And community benefit agreements are intended to provide relief from the strict application of development regulations for commercial, industrial, and institutional development to achieve a substantially higher quality development that provides a public benefit that would otherwise not be obtained. A community benefit agreement proposal requires the Planning Commission to make a recommendation regarding consistency with the comprehensive plan and BOCC approval. And one thing that should be made clear is that residential uses cannot be included in a CBA proposal. Provisions have also been added to allow more flexibility on determining minimum parking space requirements. Stronger landscaping requirements for parking facilities, including increasing the number of landscape parking islands with trees. Stronger requirements for landscape buffer areas between non-residential and residential uses. And places of worship allowed to replace reader boards in existence as of the adoption of the updated zoning ordinance with electronic message centers in any district in the county. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to go over some of that.
Thank you, Ed. So that was a overview overview of hot topics in zoning ordinance as well as changes to the draft that we have now, the November 2024 draft. Due to Board of County Commissioner directive and or the way that the zoning ordinance draft was restructured and or proposed changes, there are also changes that were either necessary or beneficial to some of the town center zoning ordinances as well as the county's comprehensive plan and some of the town center master plans. So we're gonna run through those as well for you real quick. The first one, 24-01, this is a text amendment to the Prince Frederick, Lusby, and Solomon's Town Center zoning ordinance. This is to reduce the density to a maximum of 4 units per acre. Each town center density chart has been outlined in Article 17 of the county zoning ordinance. References to permitted density within the town center zoning ordinances needed to be amended to match. So that's what this one does. 24-02, this affects Dunkirk, Huntingtown, Owings, Prince Frederick, St. Leonard, Lusby, and Solomon's Town Center zoning ordinances. This one is to remove the architectural review committees and related procedures. Moving forward, is proposed that architectural review will be conducted by planning and zoning staff. (24-03) affects Dunkirk, Huntingtown, Owings, Prince Frederick, St. Leonard, Lusby, and Solomon's Town Center. This text amendment removes the use charts. The town center use charts are included in Article 18 of the county zoning ordinance draft. So by removing them from each town center just reduces duplication and to ensure consistency. 24-04. This affects Prince Frederick, Lusby, and Solomon's Town Center zoning ordinance. This one increases the transferable development right, or TDR, requirement back to 5 TDRs for each unit above 1 unit per acre. This restores the previous requirement prior to the text amendment that in 2015 that changed the TDR requirements to the sliding scale depending on dwelling type.
Quick question on that. Does that also apply to attached units,
Yes.
condos, et cetera?
Yes, so we're doing away with, it being a different number depending on the dwelling type or number of bedrooms. So all of that goes away and it goes all back to 5.
So that, you said 2015.
Mm-hmm.
There was also a change in that on 2021, I
ago.
believe?
Yeah, so the first one that was done in 2015 changed it to a sliding scale for dwelling type. There was another one that came after that added number of bedrooms for attached dwellings.
Right. So whether or not it's a 1-bedroom apartment or a 3-bedroom apartment, it's gonna be 5 TDRs
Across the board
for every dwelling unit.
is what the proposal, yes.
Okay, thank you.
24-05. This affects Dunkirk, Owings, Huntingtown, Prince Frederick, St. Leonard, Lusby, and Solomon's. This is to update all of the county zoning ordinance references throughout the town center. So all of the articles have changed in the draft. We're just updating to make sure that it's the correct reference to the county ordinance. And 24-06. This affects the Prince Frederick Town Center zoning ordinance. This is to update the residential parking requirements to match the county zoning ordinance for attached dwellings. This is addressing the concern regarding inadequate parking for attached dwelling developments. This increases the guest overflow parking requirement and does not allow garages to be counted toward parking spaces. So for the comprehensive plan and town center master plans, architectural review committees, the Board of County Commissioners directed staff to eliminate the architectural review committees in May of 2024. This requires architectural review committee language to be removed from the affected town center master plans of Huntingtown, Solomon's, and St. Leonard. This can be found in the attachments C, B, and D in your package. Maximum maximum allowable density update. The proposed allowable maximum density in the town centers has been reduced to 4 units per acre. This requires specific density preferences to be removed from the affected plans, including the county comprehensive plan, the Honeytown, St. Leonard Town Center master plans, and those can be found in A, B, and D attachments in your package. And then designated zoning category changes that affect the county's future land use map that Will discussed earlier in the presentation. The proposed designated zoning category changes of 8 parcels to heavy industrial would require revisions to the future land use map and the comprehensive plan. The parcel is currently zoned I-1, Rural Community District, and Farm and Forest District located in the southern portion of the county. So as a wrap-up, staff requests that the Planning Commission hold the public hearing and take appropriate action on each item. The public hearing is scheduled with the Board of County Commissioners for December 17th. And if the zoning ordinance is adopted by the Board of County Commissioners on the 17th, it can officially become effective the earliest 10 days from that date. On the screen is a link where all the information can be found, crawfordcountymd.gov/zoning ordinance update. You can access the draft articles, the draft zoning map, as well as a lot of supplemental materials. And with that, I will turn it back over to Planning Commissioners for questions and discussion before, until we're ready for the public comment portion.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Commissioners, comments, questions?
How many agencies, when we send something out for agency comments, how many agencies does that go out to?
I don't know the exact number, but it is quite a long list.
I mean, it's over 20, I would imagine, right?
I think so. I think it's somewhere from 20 to 30
20 to 30?
different departments and agencies.
Okay. Right, just out of the gate, superficially from appearances, seeing only 3 agencies replied to this, to me is a little disheartening. I was really looking forward to seeing agency comments from a wide array of different agencies, not just 3. So, I mean, that was just something I noticed out of the gate. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
in regard to text amendment 2402, the elimination of the architectural review committees, doesn't staff currently have the ability to process applications without the architectural review committee having a quorum?
Yes, as far as I understand it, if one of the art communities has an agenda item, but their meeting comes up and they do not have a quorum, it reverts back to an administrative review.
So is that language currently in the ordinance or not?
It is.
Okay, so by eliminating the architectural review committees, the burden falls on staff to make the decision. What checks and balances are in place to keep an administration from pressuring staff into moving something along that maybe shouldn't be moved along based on the regulations?
Well, even with the committee, whether a committee is reviewing it and making the decision or staff, we still are going by the criteria that's set in the town center ordinances.
But the committee has a little insulation from the politics that staff does not. So my question is there any protection that would prevent that from occurring?
I don't believe so. I think that staff would have the same pressure as any of our other planners that review other projects in terms of site plan and subdivision. it just falls in line. But I think with the art committees, going for so long and not having a quorum, many of them, and not being able to get, it costs time and resources to continue to advertise, to try to get members, for staff to do agendas and then do the cancellations and put all the pieces in place to be able to, have the meeting space and all of that, and then it end up not working. It actually creates more work for staff than just it being a regular review for them like we do with anything else.
It
All
had
right.
gotten to the point where staff was reviewing more than half of.
Are the committees fully staffed now?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I believe only Solomon's has been functional for a while now.
I have a question. Has there been any consideration to taking the active members from all of the architectural review committees and putting them together in one that would still be somewhat community involved, but you would have participation and get away from
To my
Wilson's?
knowledge, I don't think that has, I don't know if that has been looked at. Mary?
Mary Beth Cook, Director of Planning and Zoning. We actually took several options to the commissioners. We suggested perhaps doing one in the north, one in the south, doing one for the whole county, bringing forward the people who actually are participating. And they decided to eliminate them. So that's why we're moving forward with their desires.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Mary Beth, did you say they decided to do away with them and so that's where we're going, or is that, I guess?
That's
from
what's
the-
proposed.
Okay, I was just wondering if it was proposed or if that decision was already made.
No,
Okay.
they gave us direction to move forward with text amendments to, and
Gotcha.
that's
Okay.
on the table
Thank you.
tonight.
Is that it for questions, comments?
Very good presentation, Will and
Thank you.
Rachel. Very informative. You sort of uncomplicated something that was very complicated, but it's still a little complicated. So, but thank you, though.
And procedural question for the chair. I believe before we have any action we are going to be taking, we're hearing public comment, or,
Yes.
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Correct, yes.
So at this time, we can open for public comment.
So the floor has been open for public comment from persons in the meeting room. A reminder that all speakers must identify themselves and whether speaking as an individual, where you will be allotted 2 minutes, or a designated representative of a group where you will be allotted 5 minutes. For those attending virtually, if you wish to speak, please press *9 or use the raise your hand function. Virtual speakers will be identified by the last 4 digits of their phone number or screen name and unmuted one at a time. If necessary, you may unmute yourself by pressing *6. Our first speaker this evening is Bob Estes.
Could I rearrange my order to follow one of the other speakers? Is that allowed?
You can permit that, certainly, Mr. Estes.
Okay,
I would
we'll
prefer
move
to
on to the
follow.
next speaker, Susan Dezurek.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to make a comment. First, on the architectural review committees, I wanted to know if you would consider that when the architectural review staff is meeting, could that be an open to the public meeting, so that if someone has some information that they would like to have on the record about a certain project that's going into a certain area, that they would have the opportunity to not only send in a letter, that they would also be able to attend the meeting and have some input personally. I'm sorry, my name is Susan Dezurek, and tonight I'm speaking on behalf of Keep Calvert Country. And so the first part was just on my own. Keep Calvert Country submitted the third and final of their public comments to the Board of County Commissioners and to the Planning Commission yesterday the part of our letter that pertains to Article 25-11, and that is Community Benefit Agreements, the CBA. This article was added since the August 2024 draft. In fact, it was not introduced to the general public until October the 8th, 2024, at the Board of County Commissioners meeting. However, watching the video of the Planning and Zoning draft zoning ordinance presentation, it became very obvious that that considerable attention and thought had already gone into this renamed concept. According to the October 8th discussion, Calvert County is proposing to allow the relaxation of rules governing specific development projects in exchange for benefits proffered by the developer. While we are pleased to see it does not include residential development, it is completely unacceptable to introduce such a new concept at this late date. It was our understanding that if the county does move forward with 2 data centers to be located in Lusby, citizens were told that the county won't need to worry about tax increases. However, the strong argument for, as Commissioner Hart stated, the need for circumventing the process to favor commercial, industrial, and institutional development in the name of supposed tax revenue contradicts the reasoning for the data centers. Any process such as the proposed CBA process, which circumvents existing processes in the revised zoning ordinance, could be abused in ways not currently understood and which would not respect the will of the people. Therefore, KCC respectfully requests that the Planning Commission defer action on whether to include CBAs in the new zoning ordinance until the public has a better understanding of the implications for the county. The CBA language was a late addition after the period of public and state and local agency comment had ended. We are particularly concerned with the language that allows zoning and other county regulations to be overridden by Planning Commission and the County Commissioner's approval. Instead of hasty approval, we urge that CBAs go through the normal coordination process that includes public discussion and formal state and local agency consideration of what CBAs in Calvert would look like and why there would be any need to override county regulations. If this coordination process concludes that CBAs are a good idea, then the Planning Commission can always approve a text amendment for inclusion in the zoning ordinance at that time. Please vote to defer inclusion of CBAs until everyone knows a lot more about the implications. Considering many of the commissioners' comments at the October 8th Board of County Commissioner meeting emphasizing the need for transparency with the citizens, there's no time like the present to prove to the citizens that they meant what they said. Thank you for your time and consideration of my request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is David Burry.
My name's David Bury from Breezy Point, speaking for myself. First, I need to correct comments about the zoning ordinance draft that I made at the October Planning Commission meeting. I had misinterpreted language that I thought would increase residential density in and around several town centers and increase the number of rural commercial districts. I met with P&Z staff last week to go over that language and am now assured that neither is the case. In fact, I have to say that county staff has done a great job producing a zoning ordinance draft that more closely takes into account county infrastructure constraints and environmental concerns. However, I do have a similar concern with KCC about the CBAs. And as a matter of fact, we coordinated language on the case that we'd like to make. I ask that the Planning Commission defer action on whether to include CBAs into the new zoning ordinance until the public has a much better understanding of the implications for the county. CBA language was a late addition after the period for public and state and local agency comment has ended. So Planning and Zoning Department, Planning Commission, and the public do not have the benefit of being informed by these comments prior to tonight's hearings. Right now, I don't think that we have a good understanding of what an actual CBA in Calvert would look like. I'm particularly concerned with the language in the draft that allows zoning and other county regulations to be overridden with Planning Commission and County Commissioner concurrence, especially before we understand what kind of overrides a developer might request. Instead of hastily approving the addition of CBAs tonight, I'd urge that this go through the normal coordination process. This would include adequate public discussion and formal state and local agency evaluation of what CBAs in Calvert would look like and what developer proposals would arise to override county regulations. If the normal coordination process concludes that CBAs are a good idea, then the Planning Commission can always approve a later text amendment for inclusion in the zoning ordinance at that time. But right now, there are simply too many questions. Please move and vote this evening to defer CBAs until we can understand much more about them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, Myra Gowans.
I'm Myra, and I am speaking for Calvert Citizens United, and I think you've done a great job this evening, planning and zoning. I think they've hit the nail on the head, but there are other issues involved. Let me just share with you that the other day, it was my understanding, or perhaps I misunderstood, that you all are getting rid of the PUDs and you're replacing them with the CBAs. That's impossible. That's an impossibility. You can't do that. A PUD is a residential development unit that has other component parts in it. That's the state of Maryland, and that is state guaranteed and state driven. So if you were to say, okay, we're not going to do PUDs anymore in the county, we're now going to do CBAs, community benefit agreements, they are disparate. They are not the same thing. So all PUDs, the basis for every PUD is residential development. Now, if you all want to pull back on residential development, I don't see a problem with that. But you can't say one thing replaces another. Legally, that's indefensible. Now, the other thing I want to share with you is that I was involved in a CBA from MGM Grand up in PG County, and with the parties involved in that. CBAs have a place. They do have a place because they are good for business and tax income. That's what they drive, is tax income. They are valued well beyond anything Culver County has here except the BG&E and except the LNG plant, which we don't even get money for at the LNG plant. So I can understand the financial benefit overriding certain things, certain parameters. However, I want you to understand this. There is a board. When you have a CBA, you have rules and regulations, and they're mandated by an authority. You have to be sure who the authority is making these decisions for our very tiny, fragile county. So I'm asking you all tonight not to just hurry this up and have this all, disclosed and worked out in the back room. You have to know who is on the authority, because guess what? The authority doesn't have to agree with one another. That is the big thing that drives the CBAs. The people that are on that board, they can say, I don't agree, I don't agree, I don't agree. But the county commissioners are going to approve it. They have the responsibility of that, not just the planning commission. So those are the few things I want you to think about, I want you to consider, and I want you to talk to people who have had to put CBAs together. A CBA takes a long time to come to fruition. There's a lot of discussion, like 3-4 years of discussion, and then that wouldn't even help the county to have that happen and get stayed in the process. So those are the things that you all, as Planning Commission, need to think about and need to have on your agenda. I do believe that the citizens have to know exactly what is proposed in their districts so that they can understand and ask intelligent questions. You all, the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners, are the ones that are supposed, and Planning and Zoning, are the ones that are supposed to educate the public so that they understand this. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next, Bob Estes.
Just like Mary Beth, I hate the height of this microphone. If you would. My back's a little sore as it is. Very good. I'm Bob Estes. I'm going to represent myself tonight and try to get through this pretty quickly. I was a little surprised that you all didn't have more questions about the CBA because, as Myra mentioned, I didn't even know how complicated it was until she got up and talked. There's a lot of implications in these things. Lots of benefits too. I think it properly handled, it'll probably be a real benefit to the county, but it is complicated. But I'm here to talk about my environmental worries about CBAs. And of course that includes stormwater management, so you know that I'm still on the same point that I'm always on. But there's a lot that goes on in the environment beyond stormwater management. And the problem is with, this CBA became noteworthy because of needing some sort of a vehicle to handle these data centers. You probably wouldn't have seen it if that wasn't something coming on. And I'm pretty happy that we could get something like the data centers here in Calvert if it's done right. And it can be done right, but it can also be done wrong because they're large. Now, a lot of my concerns about environmental issues is a small environmental issue in a small plot of land, maybe you could ignore. But when the development becomes large, so do the problems. They don't scale. It's a little bit like rocket fuel or bombs. Each class of them, they do not scale from small to big. You have to consider them on their own. And the same is true with environmental issues. I believe that this pattern book that's mentioned will need to have some very specific language for environmental issues. Maybe custom language that maybe isn't necessary already. Well, anyway, if you want to talk to me after the meeting, I'll give you the rest of it. But consider that these large developments need to have more accurate, evaluation than just what we're used to. So, thank you. Next time I'll come as Friends of Hunting Creek. Sorry about that.
Thanks, sir.
That concludes our in-person speakers. Do we have any online?
No, we don't have any speakers online.
That concludes our public comment.
Okay, that brings us now to item 13, action.
Gentlemen?
So the first action needed tonight is whether or not to close the record.
Mr. Chair, I propose that, and make a motion that we keep the record open for another 30 days.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
That moves us on to, no, that's
That's
it.
it.
Sorry, yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
So that brings us to item 14, adjournment.
Do I have a motion for adjournment? Oh, I'm sorry, we do have, folks, a regular meeting after this meeting adjourns. At that meeting, there will be coverage of the school system and the attendance for such. It's very interesting, and I invite all of you, particularly those that are interested in either growth or education, to please stay for that meeting, which we turn for. Thank you. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
Second.
Motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned.
We will have a 10-minute recess before we start our regular meeting.
I did too, yeah. That's okay. I mean, we'll get there.
Hopefully we'll be able to push it back.